do that because I will completely forget and then be halfway through and
Yep,
be like,
yep.
girl, I'm so sorry. I Tulum was amazing. And what I loved about it was that I got the chance to I did something self-care, something energy, something healing every single
Yeah.
day
Oh.
that I was there. And some days I did, more than one, including I did a Temescal while I was there, Temescal,
Oh, yeah.
which was amazing, amazing, and really healing and hot as all get up, but really
Yeah,
healing.
I've only been there in the fall and the winter time, so
So a Temescal is where they have it's like an igloo, and then they
like
put
a
lava
sweat
rocks, like
lodge
a
type
sweat
of
lodge. They
yeah.
put lava rocks in the middle, and they add water, and there's chanting, and there's drumming, and there's all this stuff.
Ooh,
And
that's
what I
awesome.
really loved about the entire time that I was there is that it reminded me very much of Huna energy. Um,
Mm,
just like that really deeply rooted um, energy of healing,
yeah.
and that I really, really appreciated a lot. And then, doing it there in Tulum, there was that feminine
Mhm.
energy and that Latin feminine energy. So I was really like needing some kind of mama energy. And so I
Yeah.
got all filled up while I was there. It was great. It was so
Mm,
good.
that's
So very
beautiful.
good. Yeah.
Did you do any
Yeah.
cenotes?
I did a cenote, I
Yeah.
did. That was really beautiful, that blew my mind.
Yeah.
But the water, I've never been in water that was quite as clean.
Mhm.
Like, it just feels so different on your skin to be in a cenote
Yeah.
because it's, like, all natural rainfall. It was a
Yeah.
great trip.
That's awesome. We went to Cancun in April, I think,
Mhm.
and we did 2 cenotes, like, one that was more public with, like, vines hanging and kind of had more of, like, a tourism thing, and then we went into,
Yeah.
like, one that, only locals know about, and it's like a little kid walking you down and just random lights hanging, and it was
Those are
really
always the best ones.
yeah,
I
and we just
always
had
like
it
the
to
local thing.
ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
Sweet. Yeah. I did the
mhm.
sweat lodge by myself too because I was like, I am not about to be all sweating it out, laying. I don't wanna have to think twice before
Yes,
I lay
yes.
down. I was like, "This is all my liquid. This is"
Yes, yes.
it's a lot of sweating. I was like, "All this sweat from this little body. Wow, it was
Yes.
something."
Cleansing.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So,
Hi.
hi. Um, so I'm gonna get down to official while we
Yes,
catch up, if
yes.
that's okay.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
Yeah. Um Jada, I'm so excited to be talking to you because the last time that you and I had an interview back in 2020. I
Right.
interviewed you back in 2020, and I interviewed you, um, I think it was just as the pandemic was kicking off,
Mhm.
and we had this conversation about care at that time. And we talked about some of the madness that was going on in the early days of the pandemic. I
Yeah.
think we talked about toilet paper and, you know, people
Those are
taking off
early days,
the
early
early, early
days.
days, super early. Because I was actually in Hawaii still when we had that conversation.
Mm.
And here we are 2 years later. And first of all, I've missed you very much.
Mm.
And I'm also really, really excited to talk about what you've been up to
Yeah.
um, over the last couple of years. And well, first of all, I want to introduce to my audience
Yes.
Jada Selner, who is this. I don't even know how fully to describe you.
Mm.
You are this amazing harmony between business and entrepreneurship and heart and being an actual human being. And I know that for you, the name of your podcast and also a lot of what you do is around this concept of leading with love. And as someone who knows you, personally and has known you for a couple of years, I will say that you are the epitome of that, of
Mm.
an incredible leader who leads with love and with intention. So I'm so excited to be able to, for the second time, interview you and have folks, kind of be a fly on the wall to our conversation. Uh,
Yes.
and I'm really excited to talk about this next project you have going. But before we get to that, um, say hello and tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah. Well, it's an honor to be back again. And it's also been so beautiful to witness just your body of work growing and expanding and your dreams and visions coming into physical form. It's been really,
Thank you.
really cool to
Yeah.
witness. So I feel that, during, through this pandemic, how all of us have retreated back into
Hmm.
our cocoons and we're reemerging and
Hmm.
not only rediscovering ourselves and what we want to build and create in our lives, but also reconnecting to the world outside of us. I feel that
Hmm.
everyone is redefining, redesigning what they want to create, who they want to connect with in the world. So it's just cool for us to kind of come on the other side. And we're still in the depths of all the things
Yeah.
that are happening in the world, but it's so beautiful to just see what heart projects are coming out of such uh times like this that can be
Hmm.
challenging and
Hmm.
confronting. So, a little bit about me. I am a business coach for women entrepreneurs and founders, and I really help people connect to their body of work in a very holistic way and to build something meaningful without burning out in the process. And I think that we can all attest to this season of life where we had a pause, a,
Hmm.
a collective global pause, but we have just, put ourselves right back into busy, to overwhelmed, to all of those pieces. And so that's what I've been really excited to talk about of giving ourselves the permission, even as the world speeds up, that we
Hmm.
allow ourselves to slow down and do things in a more sustainable way that honors our whole lives. So, yeah, my work really, business, entrepreneurship, that's a vehicle as an expression of
Hmm.
love, which is my highest value. So I use that as a vehicle to just spread more love, to remind myself to receive love, not just give it.
Hmm.
So that's really, I love geeking out on business and community building and really leading from that place.
Yeah, I love how you say, people, we weren't really doing much. I don't know anyone who wasn't still doing a lot during the pandemic. I think things shifted
Yeah.
for people where, maybe they expected the work to be about, you know, getting down to the business of entrepreneurship or working, whatever project people are working on. But I think that it shifted to, how do I navigate this situation? How do I navigate the tension associated with
Hmm.
having these, you know, uh, political and socioeconomic and social issues uh, uh, be as present as
Yeah.
they were or as
Hmm.
they have been, or any of the isms,
Yes.
racism, uh, uh, socioeconomic ism, any of those. I think the work just shifted, and we were in a situation of adding intense anxiety, adding, how
Hmm.
do I, school my children at home? How do I and my family work and operate out of this space where we expected to live? How do we now integrate work and school into these environments? And I think that that has created a new layer of
Yes.
stress for a lot of us, especially those of us who are um, up to building things.
Hmm.
Um, So I was really excited to hear about this book that you've written. Uh, and the topic is a topic that is so close to my soul. And the timing of it is so amazing. And I was so the project I'm talking about is your book She Builds, which obviously you know.
Yes.
And I was really excited to hear that the topic that you're really talking about is this way that we as women operate um, in the world as we're building. And I think that's the part of this that's so beautiful is the how do you build and um, so can you talk a little bit about this book?
Yeah.
And yeah, let's start with that.
Yeah. So She Builds, the anti-hustle guide to grow your business and nourish your life, which is really speaking to hustle culture. And, you know, hustle culture wasn't built for women to
Hmm.
thrive. It
Hmm.
was built by men for men. And that we have, you know, really jumped into this way of working, of productivity, which I call toxic productivity, of feeling like we have to go, go, go. And we're constantly moving the goalpost further and further. So we are in this state of feeling like we're never enough. We're not doing enough. We're not doing things fast enough. We're not earning enough. And that is this constant strive to keep pushing. And also, it's stressing our bodies, it's stressing our nervous systems, our emotions, our spiritual health, our mental health, all of these pieces. And then we are also, we are both parents. I have a daughter who's in 10th grade this year. So I know that the dance and
Wow.
yeah, and I was homeschooling her, before the pandemic and then during, but she wanted to go to her public high school, and I can see
Oh,
her
good for her.
re-opted into that patriarchal structure of go, 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 and just doing the test, doing the memorizing, because that's what's expected of you to do well, to get straight A's, to have the
Hmm.
achievement. And so we're doing the same thing within our businesses, within our and even inside companies. You don't have to run your own business to experience that hustle culture because it also is passed down from leadership as
Yeah.
well, and modeling this way of working 24/7, of people being able to reach you from your phone, from Slack messages and pings, and the to-do list is just a bottomless mimosa, right? It just keeps piling up.
I don't know
uh
if it has the same joy as mimosas are fun and spirited.
Right, right. What's
Yeah.
interesting, right before in 2020, I stopped drinking alcohol as an experiment for a year, and I was like, "Oh, it wasn't even my idea," but I'm almost on year 3 of being dry, and it's just been a fun experiment to play with not drinking alcohol.
Mhm.
And obviously this is a side note, but I think it's interesting of really looking at, why do I choose to drink? It's a social lubricant.
Mhm.
And I wanted to play with how could I explore being in social situations where I didn't use drinking as a way to be fun and wild and
Mhm.
expressive. So it's been
Mhm.
a really good invitation for me to just play with, all right, I can dance on the dance floor and not have to drink. I can have really long, deep conversations and not use that. So that's just a
And
side
draw that
note.
energy out of yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it's been a very intentional practice in a way of being in relationship with that.
Yeah.
And I use that because I to then experiment that with other things that I might want to try on, like, "Oh, what would it look like to not use this
Mhm.
as the thing?" Whatever it may be.
That
And
anchor for a certain
yeah,
behavior. Yeah,
yeah,
versus, like, relying on yourself for
yeah,
creativity or, for
yes,
fun or to just get out and start
yes,
dancing on your own.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so yeah, coming back into the hustle culture, it wasn't designed for us to thrive, and we're operating in this way that is actually causing us to burn out and to have physical symptoms that are having us just be sluggish and disengaged and
Yeah.
wondering why we're not able to show up fully inside our work. And so the book is really guiding people through that process of how do we detox from the hustle culture and redesign our lives and build differently.
Yeah. So one of the reasons I was so excited about this interview is because, as you said, or if you, as you observed, I've been busy and a lot going on. And one of the reasons why I continue to be such a fan of you and your work is because you get that there's this like persona that women who are up to things or who are entrepreneurs or leaders within organizations or at home, there's this expectation that while the technology has shifted, doesn't seem to have really caught up to the reality, which is this kind of view of us always being on,
Mm.
always being perfectly made up, always, having, doing a million things. It reminds me of, and now I'm dating myself. There was this commercial when I was a little girl for a perfume called Anjali,
Mm.
and the commercial was this woman who comes up out and she's like, I could whip up the bacon, I could fry it up in a pan, and never, never let you forget you're my man. And so
Yeah.
this woman is like, she shows up and she has on this suit and she's like cooking and, being sexy and taking care of the kids. And I don't think that that expectation has ever been
Mhm.
updated,
Yes.
and today we are just, I believe, harder on ourselves, and expecting ourselves to kind of do all of these things without a sweat. Um, so I was really excited to have this conversation with you because I agree that we can be women and build.
Yeah.
We can connect to our femininity and to our softness and build. We don't have to be harsh, you know, and have that equate to success
Yeah.
in the work that we're doing.
Yes. And I think I love that you named that we are double duty, right? We're doing what people are used to having, like a 1950s housewife that's supporting their ambition. And as women, our ambition is at odds with also wanting to be present for the people that we love
Yeah.
and also have enough time to fill ourselves up in the process. And I think when I talk about hustle culture, it doesn't mean that we can't hustle on things that we really
Mhm.
care about.
Mhm.
And so we have to be really careful on what we put on our plate. And there's a chapter that's called Embrace Your Pace, where it's really about having some discernment around when do we pause,
Mhm.
when do we pivot, and then when do we push. And
Yeah.
there are different seasons for that in our businesses, in our careers, and in our lives, and also taking into account what season of life are we in. If you are caregiving for your own children or for elders or for your own health diagnosis, a chronic illness, those things that we have to honor what's on our plate, not just from a professional perspective, but also personally, and really getting honest and clear about our capacity and
Mhm.
what can we hold without falling apart. And sometimes, if we're in a season of push and we need to take on more because we want to, or
Mhm.
that we need to show up for our loved ones, we need to have our support system in place and not to be the strong ones all the time, which is, especially for us as Black women to be able to, like, oh, we're the strong ones, we're resilient, we can bounce back, we can
Mhm.
take this on. And I think that it's really important that we also learn how to receive support, to not just do I'll just do it myself. I'll do it as quick. I can do it much quicker. I can get it done. I've got it. I've got this, the song,
Yes.
the commercial,
Yes. The whole thing.
Angelique.
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
there was a song that was like, I'm not your superwoman, like you
Oh,
have
yes. Karen White.
Yeah.
I used to sing that one. Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Yes.
ma'am. So for like, let's talk about hustle culture. Like,
Yeah.
what is hustle culture? Let's kind of like break that down before we dive into
Yeah.
the juiciness that is in this book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hustle culture is really the patriarchal entrepreneurship of, and it doesn't even have to be entrepreneurship, it can be in any professional um lens, but thinking that the only way to success is that we work 50, 60, 70, 80 hours in a week and we don't sleep much, we don't take care of ourselves. We just go go go. It's about the external metrics and
Mm,
achieving and acquiring more and more and more by any means necessary without taking into account the humans behind the work. That's
right.
also on teams in a company, whether you're the founder or you're an employee. It's just, we have to learn how to have boundaries of, I'm at capacity, my plate is full, but we're also with hustle culture, that's not okay. You get fired, or you're not a real entrepreneur if you're not working and hustling, on the hamster wheel of busy go go go. And also when we see this depicted, right, from unicorn companies or Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, Gary Vaynerchuk, uh,
Mhm,
we think that that is what a successful entrepreneur looks like. And so when we're not operating in what our society is glorifying as success, as a real
mhm,
business, then as women or women who have been socialized as female, we think that we're doing it wrong when we're
mhm.
not doing it that way. And so we have to build a new definition of what success looks like on our own terms. And it doesn't have to be a unicorn company that gets $1 billion valuation at the cost of all the humans in the process of building that body of work, that business.
Do you believe that it's possible to build to that level while still valuing and honoring humanity? That
Yes.
there are humans behind it? Do you believe
Yes.
that?
Yeah, I do. And there's a case study that I featured in the book from the co-founder of Canva, which is a software online company about,
Mhm,
making design accessible
mhm,
for anyone in the world. And they got a $1 billion valuation in 10 years, and they have not made their success about the metrics, even though that's what they've achieved.
mhm,
They have focused on the humans behind the business. And I talk a lot about how Melanie Perkins, the money, they give that money back to their team, to their community, to underserved communities. And so they're reallocating those funds and taking care of their team. And like, I've looked, because I was studying it, I was looking at their job descriptions. I'm like, well, if I don't want to be an entrepreneur anymore, I might work for this company. Like, they're all about love and
mhm,
service and community, and having flexible vacation policies, things that are really honor the whole human that is
mhm.
on the team, and not just about scaling just to hit those big numbers, really thinking about the humans in the process, which I call love over metrics, which is putting people first while we build something. It doesn't mean that that money doesn't matter, but that we can do it in a more humane way that's honoring the beating hearts behind the business.
Right. Which is how you and I got introduced to each other, through Love Over Metrics, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went through your program, and there are things about that program that I continue to use to
Mm.
today. And what I really appreciated about that program at the time was that it was with that focus on humanity, right? Like there are metrics and there are measures for our success. And, we all have revenue goals and what we need to live, or maybe we want more than that. I personally like more than that,
Yeah.
right? But at the end of the day, the interactions between people, whether it be the people that are on our team or our colleagues or our clients and customers, it really is about the interaction between us and how well we're able to, as entrepreneurs, take care of ourselves so that we can show up in a more humane way for other people. And I think that um, you just can't say it enough. And that's why I'm so glad that this is indeed your body of work, because this idea that work or that building business is about cutting throats or is about um, a lack of integrity, or these sayings that we've become very accustomed to, like, well, it's just business, or,
Mhm.
you know, no emotion, don't show emotion in the workplace or in business, there's no tears or whatever those sayings are. They just don't make any sense. They're not reflective of really who we are. And they create this false um, conflict within us
Yeah.
where, oh, I'm feeling an emotion. I have to show my team that I'm emotionless,
Mhm.
or that I can just go, 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 go 24/7. You talk in the book about the definition of a real entrepreneur. And I giggled when I read that, because there's like that entrepreneur where it's like, look at me, I'm a boss, look at all the things I'm doing. And then there's the real entrepreneur where you're, cooking dinner in between meetings, or, where if I have like a 30 minutes in between a back-to-back day, I run out and take a walk or do something to fill
Yeah.
myself up. That's
Yeah.
what real entrepreneurship looks like. And I think the more that we can speak to that and normalize that conversation, the
Mhm.
better for all of
Yeah.
us.
And I'm curious what tools have stuck with you that you still use today?
Yay. Thank you for asking me that. So one is the Pomodoro. I know one of the things is you talked about doing work in 25-minute um, stints, and
Yeah.
then spending 5 minutes walking around or doing something else. And that sat so heavily with me, Jada, that we at Hera Hub Carlsbad, as you know, is a business that I own here in Carlsbad. And we went online during the
Mhm.
pandemic. And it's a co-working space and business accelerator, event space, meeting rooms. And we went 100% online because we wanted to make sure that we met our members where they were.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we also brought online was co-working. So we would
Mhm.
have these virtual co-working sessions, and I actually leveraged the Pomodoro concept for those sessions where we would do 25 minutes, we'd set a timer, we'd stop, chat, go to the restroom, do whatever, and then come back to it. So I have found that to be very, very important. And then the other thing that was really helpful to me was you do this uh review of quarters.
Mhm.
And I know for me, we were saying this before we actually started the interview, like I travel a lot. I have a lot going on right now. And for me, looking at things from a quarterly perspective
Yeah.
really helps me to be realistic about where I'm focusing my time and energy. And it also helps me to prioritize.
Yep.
So last year was all about this exhibition, the Jean-Michel Basquiat King Pleasure exhibition that opened in New York. Thank you. That my
Congratulations.
sister Janine and I executive produced and pulled together. And so like 90% of my energy, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual energy went into that project because it included writing a catalog and a line of merchandise and all of that. Um, but being clear about different quarters and where my energy needs to be helps me to be kinder to myself,
Mm.
so that at the end of a day, that and Toggle. I also use Toggle a lot, which is like a way of time tracking.
Yes,
Because at the end of
yes.
the day, if when I'm not doing that, I'm like, oh my goodness, you didn't answer those 2 emails. You're terrible. Right.
Right.
So it gives me the opportunity to kind of look at something to say, I did all
Yes.
these things. I'm doing okay. You
Yes.
know?
I love that you share that because I talk about that in a podcast on the Lead with Love podcast about having a to done list. And I still do that today,
Mm-hmm.
especially
Mm-hmm.
when I'm in these busier seasons and life is happening and I'm like, "Oh, I didn't get to the thing that I wanted to do, but what did I do?" And
Mm-hmm.
I'll write that down on a daily basis. Okay, like today's date. I did those things, and then I add my little checklist. I did that, and I did that, and I did that. I also love that you talked about the quarterly planning, not just from a strategic perspective, because it's a totally
Mm-hmm.
strategic model to prioritize what are the projects you're going to give your attention to, but that it's been a tool to be kinder to
Yes.
yourself, which I think is
Yes.
really beautiful, right? Because it's about growing our businesses and nourishing our lives ourselves in the
Mm-hmm.
process. And I have a whole chapter on the Build Your Quarterly Plan. I actually feature Nikki, our fellow
Oh,
Silvestri, kind
okay.
of feature like guiding, telling the story through her of how we move through that process and also taking that time to step back and reflect on what worked, what
Mm-hmm.
didn't work, what would I do differently next time, and that I look at stepping back as a strategy. It's not a failure. Oftentimes when we like get off the productivity train where we're not doing something, we're not moving a project forward. That's what hustle culture makes us believe, that we should constantly be doing something
Mm-hmm.
in order
Mm-hmm.
to be worthy and deserving of success. But when we are building intentional lives, we need to be able to step back and think. Like thinking is just as important as doing,
Absolutely.
reflecting so that we don't keep doing the same thing over and over again. That's actually not good for our souls, not good for our businesses, not good for our team members, whatever that is. But if we keep operating, if we set a new year goal, in January and hold fast to that till the end of December, there's a lot of stuff that could happen in that in between time where if you had just taken a moment to step back, to think, to reflect what's working, what's not, what might we do differently,
Mm-hmm.
then you can make adjustments to your plan based on the new information that you have in shorter segments of looking at things every 3 months, every quarter instead of every year.
Right. And I think also paying attention to the type of energy that's required for certain things. I think that a lot of the way things are set up today, they're set up with this idea, like you just said, of doing, like checking things off, like I'm doing
Mhm.
this, I'm doing that, I'm doing this. And what we're not valuing, what we could value more, and I'd love to see us value more, which is why this work is so important that you do, is the emotional energy that goes into pushing things up a hill sometimes, the
Mhm.
mental energy. So having a day of tasks where it's just like checking things off is a very different day than having a day where I am having this kind of a conversation, for example, where I'm interviewing you today, and the things that I will process through this conversation.
Yeah.
Or a day where I'm writing and developing content is a very different day than the day where I'm like checking off, make
Mhm.
sure I do, whatever those things are. And so I think that the the way that the world operates in this hustle culture does not take into account that we're humans processing things,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
so, like, you need some time to think, you need some
Yeah.
time to feel, you need some time to,
Mhm.
you just wrote this book, which I want to talk about the process a little bit.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah.
very different set of activities than, I don't know, balancing your checkbook or
Right, right,
whatever,
right.
you know? Um, so let's talk a little bit about, I know you wrote Single Green Smoothies years
Mhm.
ago. And
Mhm.
now, you've just completed writing She Builds. Can you talk a little bit about the difference in the process, or like what was different,
Yeah.
if
Yeah,
anything?
absolutely. Yeah, a lot. So definitely with Simple Green Smoothies, it was a recipe book, right? And so one, it's a lot easy. It's interesting. I wouldn't say a lot easier because I actually struggled writing that book because I didn't want to write about the health benefits of chia seeds. And, it definitely wasn't where my soul was calling me to, but I did want to get that body of work out to help people adopt that habit because it
Hmm.
giving, having those extra leafy greens in your body for energy. So and also I co-wrote that book. So there was a lot of dividing and
Hmm.
conquering, like you take this chapter, I'll take that chapter. There was also a lot of photos in that process. Um, and one thing that I say, and I think this would be helpful for people, is when you're thinking about where your passion lies or where your energy and excitement is paying attention to the books that you own that you
Hmm.
haven't read,
Mm.
and these are the things that you think you should be learning about. It's a should. It's almost an external expectation that you've put on yourself or that you've gotten from society that this is what I think should be important. And then pay attention to the series of books that you have completed and looking at that list. And that will give you a little
Hmm.
bit of clue of what you
Mm.
really value and what matters to you. And so I had so many health and wellness books as I was writing that book, and I never read a single one. Like my interest was not piqued. I was not interested in that. And I realized the many of the books that I enjoyed were around lifestyle and being intentional about, your days and your dreams and your business. And
Hmm.
so it was very interesting for me to see that distinction. And so I knew that I had to write the book about the thing that I really cared about, the thing that I was
Absolutely.
just consuming so ravenously. So with She Builds, it was a longer process. Like Simple Green Smoothies, it was very quick. We wrote, I think, from book deal to pub date, we came out in November of 2015,
Mm.
11 months.
Okay.
And this book has been on my heart. I met my lit agent who I worked with in 2014. So I met him in 2014, but I knew that I needed to write the Simple Green Smoothies book first. And then I think I came back to him in 2018 and I was like, I'm ready. And then I was like, I'll get you the proposal. And he didn't hear from me for a really, really long time. And then it wasn't until 2019 that I started working on it again. And then it was 2020 when we sold the book
Hmm.
to Harper Business. And
Hmm.
that's when I got the book deal and started writing. And the writing process for me, I had to learn what my writing style was in this season because I had to write 60,000 to 80,000 words, not
Hmm.
100 recipes. So that's
Right.
a huge
It's very
difference.
different.
And then, a lot of people say, like, just put your butt in the seat, write every day for, just write an hour a day or X amount of pages per day, 250 pages per day. And I did that, and I was so disciplined, I'm putting a quote around that, to show up, put my butt in put my booty in the seat and write,
Hmm.
and I was getting no progress writing, but I wasn't connected on a soul level to the book. Like, I
Hmm.
felt like I was just doing the work, I was just doing the reps, and that's a very masculine approach, and as women, we embody masculine and feminine qualities the same as men, so there's nothing wrong with that, but it wasn't working for me. I wasn't
Right.
unlocking myself creatively, and so I talked to my life coach, Rebecca McLaughlin, and I was stuck for a month. I was like, "I'm not getting anywhere. I don't know what this book is about. Which way is up?" And I was like, "I think I need to extend my deadline again." Like,
Hmm.
I was, that's something I always say, ask for more time, but I was facing some resistance, and
Hmm.
she was like, "Don't extend the timeline this time." So this is now I'm going into a push season versus a pause or a
Right.
pivot, and I actually had to kind of rally, and her recommendation was to book a hotel for the next 3 weeks. So and write by myself, just a solo writing retreat, and that shifted everything for me.
Mm.
I what I booked a hotel 3 to 4 nights every week, and then I'd come home, fill up my time with my family, and then go back and just immerse myself in the creative process. And so what I learned about myself in this second is I am an immersive creator. I
Mm.
need to be all the way in with the book and get beautiful mind about it and surround myself with the index cards and write. And I was doing so I think the most pomodoros I did in a day might have been like 17 pomodoros.
Wow, good for you.
And just but that focused energy. And I think especially for me, being a mom, being a wife, having a fur baby, all the things, me trying to do it every day with all the interruptions of life, I wasn't able to get deep with the book. And so this process was more helpful for me for, my husband take, hold down the fort. I'm going to go off and I'm going to drink my green smoothies, my green juices, go in the hot tub, but I'm just going to write. I'm going to create.
Mhm.
And so I have really enjoyed the creative process, and I think that's another way of us detoxing from hustle cultures to actually enjoy the process and not just thinking about the finished product, the outcome, the achievement, the accomplishment at the end. I have
Mhm.
really enjoyed every step of the writing process, even though it was hard. I had to edit and do several rounds of editing, which was very intense. I'd be in my office from like 8 a.m. to sometimes even 8 p.m., but it
Mhm.
felt enjoyable. Do you know? Like I
Mhm.
really was just like, I am in this work. I'm excited about it. So I needed a lot of support and I allowed myself to receive that support in doing this. Co-working days, pomodoros, talking to my life coach to move through those emotional blocks and pieces. A lot of the things that I talk about inside the book, I
Mhm.
was practicing and living in my own writing process.
I love so last I've been talking about writing forever, for a long time.
Yes,
And
yes, yes,
last
yes.
summer, my sister and I, uh, Eileen, who's the production manager for the exhibition, and our stepmom, we were tasked with or faced with writing the catalog for this exhibition. And it's not an academic catalog, it's more of a
Yeah.
scrapbook. And it talks about the history of our family and about our brother and all of that. And we were faced with having to do it with a shortened timeline because of all the supply chain issues. And in order to get it to where it needed to be, in order to be printed, we needed an accelerated thing. And it was
Yeah.
similar to what you're saying in that we had like 3 months, I think. And the book is it's actually right there. It's like 300 something pages.
That's
And
real. That's
I
not
know, but
easy.
it's not
That's
all I know, and it's not all writing, like, it was images, but it was, like, all this stuff in
Yeah.
between, and I, like you, started off with this, like, idea that I was just gonna, like, be a writer, and I was gonna, like, sit
Yes.
down and be disciplined and just sit down and make it happen, Lisan, and that was big BS. It didn't work that way for a number of
Yeah.
reasons. One was that we still had an exhibition that we were still working on at the same time. So it wasn't
Yes.
like I can just take my entire life. I had other businesses going on and other things happening. And so what I found for me that worked was I live alone, so I didn't need to go anywhere. But what I did was I made a day of the week the day for creativity, where
Yes.
that was going to be the energy of my day. And so whatever I needed to write, I didn't like make it so that I had to force myself to sit at a specific time. I just
Yeah.
put myself in that energy. And
Yes.
sometimes it would spill into the weekends and I would be like, okay, this is a weekend for creativity. So I didn't hang out, I didn't do other things. I was
Yeah.
just in the space of writing. And that worked for me. And
Mm.
then if I had some time throughout the week before those days, I was able to kind of get it in because I knew that it was handled. And
Yeah.
so I think for people who are um, thinking about how they can possibly integrate expressing their stories, whatever those stories are,
Yeah.
I think it really comes down to the crux of it being to find what works for you.
Yes. Yes. Giving yourself permission to build, to
Yeah.
create, to write, to express your way. And within the hustle culture, it feels very dogmatic, like this is the way and it's not the only way. But
Right.
when you have a majority of, predominantly male white men telling you this is how you should work, this is how you should write, this is how you should create, we think that that is the only way or that is the right way or the best way. And for women, recovering perfectionists, we're like, we want to do it right. We want to do it
Yeah,
the
of
right
course.
way.
Of
We have
course.
ambition. We want to build,
Yeah.
really cool stuff. But we need to be more fluid. That's embracing that feminine side of being able to test and try things until you find the thing that works. But when we
For
come from,
you.
yes, for
For
you,
you, not for everyone
yes,
else. Yeah.
yes. And for you, where you are like, hey, I live alone, so I could work from my home without the distractions,
Yeah.
right? And going to be different for everyone. And some people sitting down every day for an hour a day might work really great. And that's okay
Yeah.
too. That's not wrong either. It's really finding the process that works best for you. And what I've learned in studying and listening to the writing process is every book is different. So as much as right now I'm like, I'm taking notes, I'll be ready next time. I'll know who to hire right away. I won't wait. I won't delay. I won't
Yeah.
procrastinate, all of those things. But what I'm learning is every creative project has its
It's
own
it's nuance.
own energy, your own relationship with it and how you relate to it, how you show up for it. So I think that's important to note too is our way, it can shift and change with each season of our lives, with each project that we take on too.
Mhm. I wanna talk about I was, flipping I have not read every single page of your book, but I did go through it, and, you have so many nuggets always. That's why I always enjoy talking to you and interacting with you so
Mm.
much. But I was flipping through and, I saw the statement that I love and that for me is the epitome of Jada Selner,
Mm.
and it is, burnout is not an option,
Mhm.
that you have. I think it's in one of the first couple of chapters of the book,
Yeah.
and I saw that, and it was like, that is Jada Selner, right? Um, it's not about the success, it's making sure that whatever you do, you're doing you're accomplishing it, but you're accomplishing it in a way that helps you to stay who you are. I think this work, and I'm going to ask you to speak about the burnout thing in a
Yeah.
second. I think this work is years ago, I read this book called The Second Shift,
Mm.
and I studied cultural anthropology in school. And it was this book about the where this woman Barbara, I forgot her last name, but you look up the book. It's a really
Yeah.
interesting book, and it really speaks to the difference for women who are working or working outside of the home, how different it is from women for women than it is for men.
Yeah.
And she was really talking about kind of the norm for gender roles. This book was written, I think, in the
Mhm.
80s. And she talks about how women go out and have a full day. Entrepreneurship wasn't as big a deal back then, I don't think,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's like women go out and they're leaders and they're working and they're doing whatever they do. And she really spoke to women who are working, in a variety of things, all the way
Yeah.
from, women who are cleaning homes to women who are teachers and executives and leaders. And it came down to the same thing that women have a second shift. They
Mhm.
do the thing and then they come home, and that's when their second shift begins.
Yeah.
And that work for me, when I read it a couple of decades ago, it was so important because it really helped people who read it who read that to not feel alone and to understand
Yeah.
that if you come home after working and being out of the house for 10 hours and you're not skipping around washing dishes with
Mhm.
joy, it's okay because you're working a second shift. I
Yeah.
see She Builds as just as important a work for women and men
Mhm.
to really have a better understanding of the reality within which we're building
Yeah.
and what's happening on the periphery of our lives while we're making decisions about how we're going to show up
Yeah.
professionally and personally. So burnout is not an option. That is
Mhm.
gold, gold, right? Because if you start off with that,
Yeah. It's a
whatever,
decision.
yes,
It's a decision that if you take it on, if you take that decision on and then start to embody it and model it and declare it, even within my own company with my team, I say that burnout is not an option. So let's reconfigure our commitments. Let's rejig the how we're prioritizing projects. What do we need
mhm,
to delay? What do we need to stop so that we don't burn out? I really, for me, I'm not holding just my own self-preservation in the process. The people who are helping me build the work in the world too is really important. I do the
mhm,
same thing with my daughter of really teaching ourselves how to self-soothe, how to do things when we do feel stressed because burnout is not an option, does not mean, like, you might not it doesn't, like, keep you from not burning out. But if we
right,
have the tools to bounce back quicker or we have more a self-awareness of when, like, "Uh-oh, I'm teetering. What do I need? What do I need to do to refill so I can serve from the overflow?" But it truly is a decision to claim for yourself, for the people that you love, like, "Oh, wait, hold on, we need to stop the
we're not going
presses."
there.
Yeah, we need to
Yeah,
readjust so that this works, for everybody, that we are whole people, in
mhm,
this process, bringing our whole selves to work, and I believe that business is personal. We spend a lot of time in our work and however we're showing up, whether you're volunteering in your children's classroom. I mean,
mhm,
even the PTA, they overwork themselves and need
absolutely,
more support, and to really find ways to not overdo it or not to take on too much,
mhm,
because that's what leads to the burnout and the fatigue and the stress and all of that.
right, and paying attention to what you're taking on.
Yeah.
And
And you
the
also,
energy behind it, because it doesn't all come down to an hour, 2 hours, 15 minutes, 20, it's like
yeah.
really, I know for me, I used to take a tremendous amount of pride in the fact that I can do so much and I can
Mhm.
get so much done, and it's really true. I am productive as heck,
Yes,
girl.
yes,
I
you
don't
are.
even know how I do it. I'm super productive. But what I've learned what I've learned is how to live in harmony with the rest of my life, or how to produce
Yes.
while also in harmony. Because what would happen in the past is I would go so hard. I'd be like the marathon runner, right? I do the 26 miles. I'm talking about the New York City Marathon. I do the 26 miles, and then I'm like laid out for 2 weeks because I can't
Yeah.
even move. And so one of the things that I'm learning, still learning how to do and still kind of putting into place is really exactly what you're saying. Like, no, burning out, not an option. I don't want to do that. I have no interest in that. What I do want to do, though, is understand that if I am as productive as I am, and if
Mhm.
I am up to the number of things that I'm up to, what can I put into place and gift myself
Yes.
to make sure that I'm taking care of myself along the way? Like, I have to
Yes.
matter just as much as ticket sales, or sales to one of my workshops, or to product sales and all that, or members to Hair Hub Carlsbad. I have to matter in that as well.
Yes. I love that you say that because it's in the seasons when we are busiest, when we have high output, that we actually need to double down on self-care.
Yes.
But those are the times when we're like, "I don't have time for that."
Right.
But you're already operating at high output, and so you actually need to double down so you can sustain that
Absolutely.
energy. I remember when I was in the process of selling my half of Simple Green Smoothies to my business partner, it was the busiest season of my life because I'm still delivering on my responsibilities within the company. I am also getting ready. I'm speaking at different events. I'm getting ready to launch a course. It was my Build Your Challenge, like beta course at that time. There was so much going on, lawyers, contracts, valuations, all the things. I also sprained my ankle and I was like, what? But I actually, I don't think that, I doubled down on self care during that time. I spent more time in the morning by myself so that I could sustain myself throughout the
Mhm.
day for like a good month, that I was like, all right, let's do this. And I'm going to need to take even more, like take care of myself even more than on
Mhm.
those other times when I don't have so much output happening.
Mhm.
I just love that you say that, like, I have to matter just as much or even more
Absolutely.
than the
Absolutely.
project that you're working on.
Yeah. So my care is more about performance than it is looking at it as, being overly indulgent, which is
Yes.
fine. I'm
Yes,
actually okay
totally.
because I overly indulge in work. So why not overly indulge
Oh, I
in
love that.
taking care of myself into feeling
Ye
really good?
Yeah, I love
Um,
that.
yeah, I wanted to talk about a couple of things I want to make sure that we get in during this conversation. One is really quick, if you could think about a couple of tips for the anti-hustle strategy. So I know we
Mhm.
talked about, and I'm making an assumption here that like having burnout not be an option
Yeah.
means that you also have to have some strategies for the
Yeah.
anti-hustle. Can you talk a little bit about the concept?
Yeah, yeah. I would say the number one thing that I would invite people to do is to define your enough number,
Mm,
to define what's enough. And for ambitious folks like ourselves, we have big visions, big
mhm,
numbers, big money goals, but there's something really powerful in defining enough, because that's your baseline for success. If
mm,
I've reached this place, I'm good. My nervous system can settle, and anything above is surplus, and I can be generous and give from that overflow. But defining what is enough is, to me, that's the one concept and strategy that I'd love for people to take away, because when we know our enough number, then when we are in seasons where we're like, oh, it would be really hard to push right now, you can actually take your foot off the pedal and
mhm.
coast and go into what is it? Not neutral. When you're on the freeway,
Cruise.
cruise
Mhm.
control,
Yeah.
right? There's sometimes you just like, you know what? I'm at 65 and I'm just going to stay here.
Mhm.
Defining your enough number is the antidote to hustle culture, because everyone else outside of you is telling you more and more and more. Move the goalpost further, dangle the carrot stick in front of you. But when you know your enough number, then you can be grounded of, I am taken care of. I am provided for. I am doing enough. I am earning enough. I am worthy enough to move at whatever pace that I want to move in this season of my life. So, because I don't want to overwhelm people with too many strategies, but that's the one that I would love for people to really look at your livelihood and what is enough. What are the expenses and things that will allow you to thrive in your lifestyle? And then if you are an entrepreneur, what what does it cost to run your business? And
Mhm.
then if you add your business expenses with your personal enough number of what's going to sustain your lifestyle, then you've got your base revenue goal. And
Mhm.
then, but you can have goals way bigger than that enough number, but there's something really powerful about knowing you're enough. So you have your number from the inside out versus it coming from the outside in.
Absolutely. And the way that you do that is what are the steps that you take,
Yeah.
Jada, to actually get yourself to that?
Yeah, so I run the numbers of my life. I have it in spreadsheets,
Mhm.
I like in a Google sheet, but I also have it in my iPhone notes so that I can
Okay.
just revisit and look at it. But really writing down all your life expenses. What are your fixed expenses, rent, mortgage, your utilities, what are some of those variable expenses, the subscriptions that you subscribe to, any of your health and wellness, also taxes, healthcare. Those were things when I was making the leap from having, traditional healthcare through a full-time job. I knew that health insurance, like that was an expense I needed to
Mhm.
include in my entrepreneurial, and also taxes. Like, okay, you know, 30% is going to go to Uncle Sam. I like, so to be really aware of what is enough, and so that you can build your offerings, your services and things that make sure that you are taken care of, and that
Mhm.
you're not getting, basically, that you're not receiving the money that you need. Like your business is thriving, but you're not. Like we don't want that. So
Right.
really it's just doing the math of what does it cost for you to live, your groceries, eating
Mhm.
out, entertainment, Target. Like I have all of those expenses laid out, savings,
Mhm.
your retirement funds, just getting clear on what that enough number is. Surprisingly, it's not as much as you think. And that's the thing that sometimes we're like, I need $5 million. And it's like, oh, actually, to sustain my family, it's like $15,000 a month, and that's like, it's just not as much as we think that it is. And when I know
Mhm.
that number, then I can throttle my business and my ambition, because I'm like, okay, this is what we need baseline. And then I can create all that other space and energy to pause and slow down on my business while I write this book.
Right.
Those are the things that when you have clarity around the numbers, like just legit, how much does it cost to live
Mhm.
your life?
Mhm.
Massages, I have all of that in there. Mani pedi, like eyebrow waxing, all the things, just really listing out your expenses. And you can look through your bank account, credit card statements, and just start to build out, what am I paying every month? My checkbook, all of those things. There's just something very powerful about writing down the numbers and having it written somewhere that you can adjust really quickly. My husband and I, we've written it out on poster paper before, just so we can
Mhm.
embody it and like feel ourselves writing it. I'm like, okay, this is what it costs to live and to take care of our lives and for us to continue to thrive.
I think getting anything out of your head and on paper helps so much. I know sometimes when
Mhm.
I'm like, I got so many things, it's a million things. Then I write and I'm like, actually, if I could just get these four things handled,
Yes.
I will feel better. So let me just get these four things handled. So there's
Yes.
something to be said about just pulling things out of your head, getting them down on paper, because then you have a clear goal.
Yeah, and, there's another exercise in the book, even speaking to that, the mental declutter list,
Hmm.
which is getting everything that's in your mind.
Yeah.
It's basically like, think about a junk drawer, and you just need to like, I need to clean this out so I can feel settled.
Yes.
Do that in your mind to get
Yes.
everything out, pour it out onto the page, just so you're not holding all the pieces. Let your brain do the big visionary thinking and
Hmm.
let this paper hold it. And then you can see what to prioritize, because we can get stuck and lost in the Google Doc quicksand,
Yeah.
where it's just like,
Yeah.
it's just endless. Your screen can only show so much. So there's something really powerful about writing things down, everything personally, professionally, and then you can start to see what's rising to the top that is really essential to get done right now.
Yeah, and I know you cover that mental declutter in the book. And one of the processes that I follow is I take Post-its
Mhm.
and I just do a brain dump of everything, and
Yeah.
each thing is on a separate Post-it note. So it's like, get back to my architect about I'm renovating my house, get back to my architect, figure out what kind of toilet I'm buying, what kind of, whatever the
Yeah.
things are, right? Harahub Carlsbad, and just dump it all out on individual Post-it notes. And then I take a look at that and I kind of see where the categories are. And it just helps me a lot to have that not kind of swimming around in my head but
Yeah.
down in front of me where I can actually take action on it. Because
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes we can get into that loop of worrying about the same thing over and over and over again.
Yes.
And that's not action.
Yes, and the
It's just,
categorizing is so helpful, because our brains like to compartmentalize things, but then,
mhm,
because I do that where I fold the paper, I fold the paper in two, so we have four squares on each
mhm,
side, and then you can batch.
right.
Like, oh, these like things are together. My
Mhm,
brain is in that form of thinking, and I know
mhm,
the individual post-its is like getting things done process,
mhm.
which I know is really helpful for people too. I love
Yeah,
Post-its. I can,
yeah.
yeah, Post-its are great too.
Just anything to get those little like bits of information out.
Yeah.
So another thing you talk about, there's just so much here. I can talk to you forever. And I know we have to kind of come up with a reasonable, way to bring this home. Uh, I want I would love for you to share a bit about, Support Squad
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
what that is and why it's important.
Yeah. So a support squad is really the people that are in your corner emotionally, spiritually, intellectually. So not so much as like your dream team, which I talk about of like the logistics support of
Mhm.
getting things off your plate, but it's the soul support in your life. And I have it kind of in three different categories. We have our peers and our colleagues. So those are the people that are on this, they're parallel playmates. They're on the same journey as you. They are
Yeah.
struggling with the same things, problem solving at a same level, which is so great when you are entrepreneurial and building something meaningful in the world. So being able to have people that are in the same season of
Mhm.
life and career as you. And then we also have our mentors and advisors who can help us really think outside the box, or they're a few steps ahead of us and can kind of save us some time and some worrying
Mhm.
of like, this is very typical of what you're experiencing. That piece is really important to have. And then also that emotional support, right? So a therapist or a life coach, someone who's helping you move through some of those emotional blocks.
Mhm.
And for me, I've worked through childhood trauma, things that impact how we show up in our day to day lives, or even when we're facing resistance or procrastination. We're hard on ourselves. That's the
Mhm.
hustle culture telling us that we are wrong for not wanting to do something. But usually when we're in action, it could be burnout, like you're physically exhausted and cannot move forward, but it also can be an emotional block that is
Right.
stopping you. And you've been in my programs that I've had my life coach who's helping not just strategic and growth and scale
Mhm.
and all of these things, but someone who's tending to your emotional world and all the
Absolutely.
compartments of your life, because we can't ignore them. What you said you're renovating, or you've
I'm
got the
renovating my
architect.
house.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's taking up a lot of mental bandwidth. And so that's
Absolutely.
going to impact your capacity for how you show up in your work, and just not ignoring those things that are on your list in your life
Mhm.
too. So a support squad is having those people to lean on,
Mhm.
to verbal process with, to also share and celebrate the highs, but also be super vulnerable about the lows that come up
Right.
too, so that you are not alone. Because as an entrepreneur, even as humans, like it can be very lonely. And I think it's so powerful that we don't do life alone. We need to lean on each other.
Mhm.
So I just think it's one of the most important things is being rich in community, being rich in relationships is just essential, because you're not always going to be doing great in business. Like the
Absolutely.
external things, we need people to lean on and not just be around people when everything is great. We need
Right.
to have that trust, that emotionally, psychologically safe space for people
Mhm.
to hold for you when things are not going as great
Yeah.
too.
And to also and to be intentional about your
Yes.
support system.
Yeah,
I
some
think
relational
right.
hygiene.
Absolutely, because the person that maybe you can go and chat about, I don't know, you can laugh at the world about, may
Mhm.
be a different person from the person that can support you through your entrepreneurial journey,
Yes.
or the person that you can talk to about parenting. So I think being very intentional about the kind of support that you need, um, within the different pillars of your
Yes.
life, I think is
Yes.
important as well. Because sometimes we rely on, the friend that, we go dancing with to
Yeah.
like hold the container,
Yeah.
be a
Strategize
container
my
for,
P&L statement.
yeah, and that's not always the right thing. So I think if we're really intentional and we're like, okay, in this area of my life, I need a support squad that looks like this.
Yes.
Or, as a parent, I need a support squad that looks, has these attributes to help me
Yes.
out. Yeah. If there are three things that you would want someone to take away from after reading this book, and this book is, rich with so much information and so much support for a person who is building. Um, and I would encourage anyone to, like, if you really want to sit at the feet of Jada Selner,
Mm.
and really learn from her, a woman who walks her talk. I would really encourage anyone to read this book if you're building, because a lot of what you talk about is you have a lot of personal stories in there,
Mhm.
and you also are talking about things that affect so many of us as we're building. And it really is like confirmation, encouragement, support, and real practical exercises that
Yeah.
you can do, or things that you can think about as you're building and as you're including yourself in your
Yeah.
plans for growth. So, if there
Yeah.
were three things, Jada, that you wanted someone to take from this book, what would they be?
Yeah, I think it's definitely permission to build
Mm,
differently, to build your
hmm
way.
hmm
Looking at self-care as a strategy, as if
hmm
you're an entrepreneur, a business strategy, that it's not self-indulgent, although we can be self-indulgent. That's totally okay too. But really looking at that as a way of sustaining ourselves and to lead with love. Like, really, what is the most loving thing that you can do for yourself, for your loved ones, for the community and the customers that you serve? Just really taking on that lens of how can I be the most loving, not
mm
only to myself, but to the people that I serve. And I think that when we choose love over fear, that just um, it's just the way that I like to move through the world, and I hope that people feel that inside this book, that it's to be compassionate with yourself as well as others as you build really meaningful work in the world.
Absolutely. And my belief is that the relationships that we have outside of ourselves and the way that we interact with our different projects and people that are within our lives is simply a reflection of the relationship that we're in with ourselves. So I
Mhm.
really, again, believe that thinking about the way that you're building as a she is imperative to considering the relationship that you're in with yourself, because I
Yes.
see this book as and your philosophy as self-care,
Mhm.
and self-care while you're up to the big, bold, beautiful things that you choose to build and to create in this world. We as women uh, can really use a different way of looking at things. And so I encourage anyone to read this book and to really
Yeah.
follow you, because you're doing the thing. You really are. And I continue to be so inspired by you, and so grateful and appreciative that you're on this planet and that you're doing this work.
Thank you, Hassan. I love it.
Yeah.
Love
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I love you too. Thank you so much for stopping by.
It was an honor.
Yeah, I'm